All right. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone, depending on where you're at. We're going to go ahead and get started. We're a little bit past the start time. As people come in, though, I'll try to update folks as they arrive. For those of you who are here, this meeting is being recorded. We do intend to post this video to our YouTube page. We did distribute some information on how to protect your identity if that's a concern to you. The panels are a little less concerning because I don't think any of the audience members can be seen, and the chat is also not recorded. But if you do, I guess you can't actually ask a question either. It's only through the chat. So confidentiality is a little bit less of a concern, but just so you know, if you ask a question and you're concerned about anonymity or confidentiality, please let us know so that we don't say anything into the recording or somehow signal that we know who you are or anything about it. So jumping into our panel today, I'm very excited for this panel. We have a collection of representatives from what we call the Fulbright Diversity Collective. This is a group of alumni affinity networks that have developed over the last few years, geared towards supporting and collecting resources and developing connections among diverse Fulbrighters. My name is Tim Sensnig. I'm the president and CEO of Fulbright Prism. I use he, him pronouns. I will be the moderator today, and I'm going to let the other four panelists introduce themselves. I don't know who wants to go first. Tan, you're in the top left of my screen, so why don't you start?
Okay. Hi everyone, my name is Tang Mai. I'm the co-founder of Fulbright Lotus. I did my Fulbright grant in 2018 to 2019 in Belgian Hasselt, and I'm currently living in New York City at the moment, in Brooklyn.
Hi, my name is Tyler. My pronouns are she, her. I'm currently living in the Netherlands, but I'm originally from New York City. And I did my ETA in the Netherlands. I've done an ETA grant, and I am the event coordinator for Fulbright North.
Hi everyone, I'm Valerie, and my pronouns are she, her. I'm in El Paso, Texas, and I did a Fulbright English teaching assistantship in Bosnia and Herzegovina in 2017-2018. And I'm with Fulbright Families. I founded Fulbright Families.
All right, and I am Zuket. My pronouns are she, hers, they. I did my Fulbright English teaching assistantship in Lübeck, Germany. I'm in 2019, 2020, so the COVID cohort. And now I am back in Germany and I'm in Köln right now. And I'm with Fulbright Senat. I'm the newest board member.
Great, thank you everyone. Again, we're so excited to have you here and talk about the Fulbright Diversity Collective. We at Fulbright Prism believe it's very important to share various perspectives and talk about sexuality. This is not related to the panel, but we find it important to talk about sexuality as far as relates to intersectionality and variety of identity aspects. And so we wanted to include this event because even though this conference is geared towards LGBTQ Fulbrighters, we know that there are many out there that share other identity features, and it's good to know that they have other resources out there as well. And you all do such a splendid job at what you do, and I'm excited to talk about it today. So without further ado, my first question for you, I just wanted to ask you all what you think the purpose of a Fulbright Affinity Network or group is, generally, in your opinion. No one wants to talk first. Tyler, go for it.
You can answer first, yeah. And don't worry, my response will be short and sweet. But for me, I think the purpose of an affinity group is advocacy and to build community, right? And so I think we're all seeking change, right? And we're all trying to uplift each other, but in the midst of doing that, you kind of just build this community that you can rely on and you want to continue to grow and develop.
Thanks, Tyler. Does anyone else have a response they'd like to share?
Yeah, kind of piggybacking off of what Tyler said, I think as an organization, Fulbright Senat, values like the community that we have like built together within like the Muslim Fulbrighters all over the world right now, and then like the community that also developed through the affinity groups with everyone that's like here right now presently with the Fulbright Diversity Collective. And the affinity groups can offer support in ways that maybe the Fulbright organization or Fulbright program itself can't do, and that's very important for anyone going abroad, for anyone that's interested in going abroad, and to give them like a safe space, I guess, to like share any of the experiences they have and any of the work that they do, and for us to be able to connect them to maybe someone from like Fulbright Noir, from like Fulbright FISM. Yeah, it's cool.
Tan or Val, would you like to contribute as well?
Yeah, I think I have a very similar answer. I would just add on to that I think the mission's always something that is growing. So I think Lotus in the beginning, we really cared about just doing something as small as spotlighting Asian Fulbrighters and showcasing that they exist and that their stories are valid and interesting and vibrant. And I think from there, we sort of began to build communities and then incorporate more added ons to our missions. Like we started to develop things like being a huge advocate for AAPI Fulbrighters or being a huge advocate for certain community members. And so I think right now the mission is broadly, like everyone was saying, building community, but I think it can at times expand to other dimensions such as advocacy, support, guidance, resources gathering, things of that nature. And so I think it's always growing. And I think that's the really most interesting thing about the Diversity Collective is this like huge growingness and huge encompassing of different sort of varieties of just support and togetherness.
And then for Fulbright families, it's like all of the questions and fears and anxieties that you have as an individual, you multiply that by 2, 3, or more, and then you have all kinds of questions that come up. And I was lucky enough to have access to Fulbrighters who had taken their children, spouses, or other dependents. Anyone that you're providing for more than 50% of the year qualifies as a dependent. So I wanted to bring that access to other parents, spouses, dependent situations so that they could get their questions answered. And a lot of the time, family is really, really scared, especially if like their grandchildren are going abroad. And so you answer a lot of questions and you help them to navigate that space.
I thought of a follow-up question as you guys were talking, and I'm sorry for going off the script to the panelists. But this is actually a question that we discuss, I think, in PRISM, like internally, and then also with a lot of Fulbright staff or Fulbright administrators about kind of how we define an affinity group, or even if affinity group or affinity network or this terminology that we're using is even the proper terminology to be using. I don't know if any of you have thoughts on that, exactly kind of if affinity group is the right word, and if so, like what features define an affinity group, because I'm sure there are Fulbrighters out there right now who, despite all of our great efforts, I think, if I may be a little proud of us, might not feel like they have a group yet for them, or might feel like there's still something missing from our community, and so it might be good for them to kind of hear what other opportunity, like more general kind of aspects might apply to these types of groups that they can kind of fulfill, if that makes sense. I don't know if anybody else has talked about this in their groups or kind of thought about it. I think in PRISM, we've kind of just adopted maybe this model from like American liberal arts schools, where we have, like these affinity groups on our campuses, and we have kind of just adopted that. But I don't know if that's the right model to use, or if it is, if there's kind of set in definitions there that people have to fulfill. Like, do you have to have a demographic tied to your affinity group? Do you have to have networking opportunities? Do you have to pool resources, or can it be something else? I don't know. It's just a curious question. If no one has no one has thoughts about it, then that's fine too.
And I was not even on mute. My bad. I think it's really interesting that this conversation is happening right now, because of it kind of touching upon many different organizations that already kind of have like a solid foundation of who we are. But like the opportunity to keep growing, and then like you said this, to expand beyond what like the initial project was, also kind of is important for any advice that we can give for someone else that wants to start maybe another affinity group. And I don't necessarily know what the definition of affinity group means, and I use the terminology that was given to me. And I am not ashamed to say this, but I do think that the models that we are using maybe don't have to be like they're not set in stone, and like any way that we choose to go in the future is, I mean, it should be accepted because we're flexible, we're adapting, and we're all like doing many different things across the world. And the more people that come to be a part of Fulbright, and the more diverse that it gets, where we represent many different intersectionalities of people and individuals, I think it will shape the affinity groups and even like the Fulbright Diversity Collective in a way that maybe won't necessarily look like a United States or American college campus, so to speak, but there's always room for growth. And I think the more people that come on board within like our affinity groups and the way that we collaborate with each other, like the way we're doing webinars, where we have like collaborative panels, the one like we're on right now, it doesn't really ring to me like the way maybe clubs have done in the past, like on my college campus, but it's something new.
Yeah, I kind of think of affinity group. Like, I don't know. I know we're using this terminology, and I'm not. I think these things can be renegotiated later on, of course. But I think, in my mind, affinity groups, or at least what we're doing, is more like a coalition, and like we're working together to really do something that hasn't been done within the Fulbright organization, which is demand for a space for certain groups to exist. And though we don't all share the same mission, it's like the same line for line mission, we do share in the same like supportiveness for each other in the work that we're doing, and we're always open to collaborate. And we're all open to the same mission of making Fulbright a lot more inclusive, but also accessible to a larger population of applicants, specifically because it's usually a very much public state-run fund, and yet it's always been at times given to a very small elite group of individuals within our societies. And I think as long as we're fighting for that, even though it's a very broad mission, I think that's a very important thing for us to do. And later on, we can, of course, incorporate more things into it. But I think that's a really good starting point for all of us.
I think a lot of the affinity groups stemmed from a place of empathy and sympathy because we all have had these very unique experiences, and every single grant is unique to country, to the individual that's accepting, to the grant type. So I think they've been born out of necessity. And I don't think that it's done. I think there's so many opportunities for more topics like Fulbright dependence and Fulbright and beyond, like what happens after Fulbright. There's just so many ideas. So if anyone wants to start an affinity group, you just find that spot that you feel isn't being represented and you go after that.
Anyone else? I don't like anyone else. I think those are all really great comments. Yeah, I was just thinking like we've had those conversations before, and I kind of just threw that word affinity group at everyone when I was pulling this panel together, and I realized, maybe we should step back and really think about this, because we don't want to project a model onto anybody, but you all gave really good advice about how to maybe meet the needs that we're presenting individuals watching. So great. So I know some of you started your own organizations, and I think some of you might have kind of joined on after the organization was started. But I wanted to talk about, particularly for those who kind of started from scratch, but also for those who have joined and are still, building up their organizations. What maybe what's the biggest challenge you say your organization faces in achieving its mission?
I would say being like a solo representative has been quite challenging. Building a team within the affinity group, I think, is really, really important so that you can delegate tasks and reach a wider audience, for sure.
Yeah, I agree. I think the biggest challenge has been funding and just meeting the like Baz. Like we have so many great ideas and events we want to put on, but we're such a small team and we have no funding. So that's been our biggest challenge is just figuring out how to do all these things with the very limited resources that we have to work with.
I agree. I would say funding, but also time, right? So I'm in the Netherlands. My co-board members are in the States. So logistically, sometimes it can just be difficult to coordinate. But I agree in terms of wanting to put on as many events as possible and also pay people for being able to participate, but then having to throw in that disclaimer like, wait, we're just not established enough yet to provide that kind of service. But yeah, that's, I would say, been the hardest part.
Um, Everything that has been said, I feel like Isra and Arwa can really talk about this, who are the co-founders of Fulbright SNM. And they really did a lot of the groundwork in the foundation for the organization, working with like the commissions and especially getting the support from the other affinity groups that we have on the call today. And I think still to this time, like a lot of us here are doing a lot of great work. We're coming from a place of compassion and empathy, like whether we did this and we experienced some of the stuff we're working on, or we want to do more work and activists, but it's really easy to burn out or get that feeling of like, wow, like this is taking a lot of my time and it's something that we love to do and we like doing, but it's important to like manage time, and that can be a challenge with like work and being in different time zones. But at the end of the day, we always manage to come together, which is really important to do, even though it's challenging right now.
Yeah, I think that's the same for Fulbright Prism. I guess I should have maybe clarified for those who aren't aware, all of these organizations are volunteer run. We all have jobs outside of what we do. We have no set funding stream or any sort of revenue. This is we're all very grassroots. So I don't know if that gives a little bit more context to these answers, but I think it definitely checks out. I think Prism has had the same issues with just having time, lack of time and lack of money to really do exactly it is that we want to do. And we at Prism in particular are very grateful for our volunteers who make it possible, but yeah, it's a struggle. People have full-time jobs and we have no money pulling this conference together. We've said it many times. We're very grateful to our sponsors and the U.S. State Department who has given us a grant to sponsor this conference. But yeah, it's a struggle. We see you. We're here. So on that's like kind of similar note, I guess, despite those challenges, you all stuck with it. You're all thriving. You're all succeeding. What tips do you have for others who might want to follow in your footsteps and start their own affinity group?
I guess remember your why, you know? So for me, I'm always thinking back, okay, why am I doing this? Why am I a part of this group? Why did I, apply to be a board member? Because once you go back to that, you'll figure out the rest, and then it's kind of like, for me, it's just, I guess, like a little friendly reminder of what is meaningful to me. And I also love giving back to others. So for me to be able to do this with Fulbright Noor, it's absolutely great. So I just go back to, my why.
Yeah, I guess the advice I would give is just to do it. Like if you want to do it, just go for it. I'm gonna be honest, a lot of us, this is very grassroots, and a lot of us had no idea what we were doing. And it's a lot of trial and error, and sometimes you will fail. Sometimes you'll have events and no one show up, and you have to learn from that event. And don't be discouraged, and definitely reach out to the other affinity groups for advice and help. But I remember when I reached out to actually Fulbright Noir when I was starting Fulbright Lotus, the advice I was given was just like, just do it. And I was like, okay, I don't know how I'm gonna do it, but I'm just gonna do it. And that's what I did. And then from there we figured everything out along the way. But I think that's really the first crucial step, is just to start the group.
And for me, even though I'm still like a solo member in my group, I've already like written down all of the responsibilities and duties and broken them into possible positions. So if anyone inquires to help, I'm like, oh, I'm ready. Here's everything that I need help with. And really making a good plan for your content and consistency and frequency. I'll admit that life comes up, you know, life happens. So granting yourself grace is a huge part of what I do. Like, it's okay. We're making a difference, you know, one person, one potential applicant, one Fulbrighter, one returnee at a time.
I think given everything that's been said, it's important for us to, I guess like if I was gonna give any advice, being like, I've been with Fulbright some 1 year, celebrating the little victories, like the little milestones that like all of us have accomplished, and Fulbright and like Israel and Ottawa have accomplished within the year, because it takes actually a lot more work than maybe even just like having like a little panel and then like someone shows up with like great questions and then you feel like you kind of like help someone. You're just like, this is it, like, you know, pop open a bottle, but like maybe not right now. But that's something I always would advise anyone like starting an organization, because it's not easy and it takes a lot of work, but the support of this community that exists here is always available. And that's really important to think about and to consider when starting one.
Yeah, I love this idea of remembering your mission that Tyler had mentioned. It definitely, I think, helps when you're kind of struggling through, or you're like Tan said, not sure what you're doing some days. It's just like, no, we got to stick to the mission. Like we'll just push through. Like this wasn't great, but tomorrow will be better. And somebody is benefiting from this out there for sure. And I think that's the greatness of the Fulbright group community as well. You know, there's always somebody out there watching and benefiting from what you're doing. It's wonderful. Now, this is more specifically to your individual organizations. I wanted to talk a little bit about the main projects that you're working on, any kind of upcoming events or big tasks that you're trying to undertake, just to kind of give our audience a little sense of what it is that's on the horizon.
I'll go first. So I have really spread the adventure and exploration to my family in abundance, and I've talked my family into, well, they've agreed. I didn't talk them into it. They really want to do it too. We're gonna get like a camper trailer and a truck, and we're gonna go around the U.S. for a year. So I really want to make myself available as we travel to anybody who wants to meet up or talk about Fulbright and what it's like to bring your family and what it's like to travel that way. And then even just as an individual, what the experience has to offer.
That sounds really fun. That's cool.
I'm really excited for you and I hope all goes well. Yeah, if I'm back in the States, in Chicago, stop by. And I think just to really quickly say, Fulbright CNM is going to be working on expanding, doing more highlights and a little bit more collaborations with other organizations in the next coming month. We kind of had a little break after the summer to regroup and kind of like ask ourselves the why questions. And we're hoping to do a little bit more in-depth highlights with like actual interviews with people who did Fulbrights. So stay tuned.
Yeah, Fulbright Lotus is also doing a collaboration with another affinity group, who may or may not be on this panel, in the upcoming months. And we're also doing, launching, I think, continuing like 2 different advocacy campaigns as well. And so I think that's mostly going to be our biggest projects just into the end of the year, because we understand that people kind of get a little bit tired near the holidays. So we're just going to focus on those advocacy campaigns and then regroup to figure out what other events we want to do in the future. But we also have a monthly book club that we also do every month. So that's been our consistent like event where people meet up and talk about their feelings about different books that we each recommend.
Fulbright North also has some ideas for events with other affinity groups, but I'm thinking that will take place in the fall. But our biggest project this year will be getting a mentorship program up and running, and hoping that we can start that by next year.
Awesome. Ton made me think of another kind of smaller follow-up question, but like the book club that Lotus is doing, are there any kind of ongoing features that people can expect or look forward to if they follow you or want to get more involved? It sounds like maybe the mentorship program is going to be something that's ongoing. Lotus has the book club. I'm not sure if there are other activities that people can kind of plug into.
We also have the mentorship program too. We also
Oh,
started
cool. That's yeah. I did know that. You didn't say anything, so I didn't want to like.
we also have a mentorship program and a book club going at the same time. But I think the book club is more accessible to the wider Fulbright audience, and the mentorship programs is very much geared towards matching people up with people who are currently on their grants, so offering support in that dimension. But I think in the future we might try to aim for not monthly because that might be a bit too much for us, but more seasonally happy hours where you don't read a book, you just sit there, you talk to people and play games. And so we're thinking of doing trivia because it actually goes really well. I don't know why, but it's really fun to realize you don't know that much about like random facts.
For Fulbright families, I'm working on prepare your dependents for departure. So like everything that's in there it's like an activity book encouraging anyone who's taking a dependent with them, whether it's spouse, children, or family members, little activities that kind of get them out of their comfort zone, out of their neighborhoods and into different areas. Learning how to find resources like playgrounds is really challenging when you're abroad sometimes. So different things to be aware of. And then we give them, I say we, because I'm like hoping to bring on a team, right? I want to give them little activities that are country specific as well. I didn't do as much research as I could have about my placement, about my country that I was applying to before. Because, you know, you look at food, you look at what you're packing, you look at like travel and geographic location, weather, climate, things like that. But I never thought to look for playgrounds. I looked for schools before I went for my son, but there's just so much. So I wanted to make like an activity book that really brings everything up to the surface.
Yeah, wow, that's impressive though. How do you, my final question, then we'll take some Q&A from the audience. I see there's already 4 waiting in the wings. But I guess just to kind of close out our formal Q&A, how can people get involved with your organization? By which I mean both like, are you guys looking, I guess, for more team members, or I know some of you are, or that was very exciting, or just like on a general level, how can they best follow you or kind of keep up to date on what you guys are doing and just generally stay plugged in?
Fulbright Suriname loves social media, and using our social media in order to interact with our audience is very important. And people can really reach us through our DMs or email, even if they have an idea, but they're like, hey, this would be a great idea for a panel. I would love to do this or some type of event. We will help organize it. And if someone's interested in joining more frequently, like being a little bit more long-term, we're also open to that as well. And for the record, we did have someone last year in 2020, like during fall 2020, who reached out to us and she was like, I'm really interested in doing this idea. I think it'd be a good idea. And we were just like, yes, all for it. And we collaborated on it and she worked with us on it. And we had a panel discussion on like what it's like to do an ETA abroad in like specific countries from Muslim participants. And it was really great. It was great to get like also like the idea from someone, because sometimes it may seem like it's hard for us to get people to come like to our events, but it's also even harder for people to like, I don't know, ask questions and want to go there. So it's like remembering that and like always leaving that communication open is what we're trying to do.
Yeah, I agree. I think Instagram is the best way to reach us. I find that email is where all like very professional organization reaches us, but like more um I guess like normal everyday Fulbrighters allow our Fulbright alums, they usually reach us through Instagram and we're very quick to answer Instagram. So that's the best way to reach us, I'll be honest. We also have a Slack channel that we've started that's been growing steadily, where we kind of post a lot of our newsletters, so just our updates of what we've done that month. And most of our events are highlighted on our Instagram, but if you want further resources, our Slack is also there as well. You just need to message us and we'll send you. I also think we have a link to the Slack on our link tree. So if you go on our link tree, it's probably there as well.
Fulbright Noor also loves social media, so I agree that just DMing us is the best way to reach us. And we also have some opportunities where you could volunteer with us. For example, if we are working on an event, we'll need some more help with that. And you can also just inquire about other ways to get involved with us. And we'll see.
And for Fulbright families, I agree. Like we've kind of made a hub on Instagram with Prism and Noir kicking it off. And it's just a really wonderful space. It's really easy to get in contact with Fulbright families. I'm one person, so it goes to my phone. If you message, I'm there for you. And also, even if you don't have dependents and you're going as just a solo grant, um, it's important because not all families understand what Fulbright is. And there's these very serious conversations that come around the whole experience, especially if you're mitigating like fear and anxiety, especially with family members who have never left their geographic location, cultural aspects of the experience as well. So I encourage anyone who wants to reach out to Fulbright families. Like we're not only exclusive to Fulbrighters with dependents. And if you need like a practice mom to be like, hey, I'm gonna go to another country for a year and nobody does that in our family, then I'll be your practice mom.
Well, thank you again, everyone. I'm going to turn now to some of the audience questions. Audience members, if you have other questions, feel free to drop them in the chat or in the Q&A function. I'm just going to read down the list and keep the conversation going. So our first one, somebody asked, I was wondering if you think there's a need in the online Fulbright alumni community for new affinity groups. Do you think there's an affinity group you'd like to see in the future? You're all nodding your heads. I don't know if that's an understanding or because you have so many ideas. This is exciting.
So many ideas, so little time. I really like Beyond Fulbright. I'm putting it out there, right? Like someone start an affinity group that's called Beyond Fulbright because there's so many opportunities that I didn't readily know about when I returned from Bosnia.
Can you explain a little bit more what you mean by that, Val? Like what kind of opportunities surprised you?
So like, I think they're like the grants, right? Is it CDAF grants that full any government exchange program grantees, right? You can access that. Then there's the Alumni Ambassador Program with Fulbright, doing like another part of like advocating, going to the Congressional Hill and advocating for the program, speaking to people who really are part of that decision-making process. I had no idea that any of that was available.
Any other ideas?
Yeah, I wish there was like a Fulbright group just dedicated to like working class Fulbrighters or like Fulbrighters from like more less like not affluent backgrounds just to get together, because I know there's been a lot of conversations about the grant itself and the cost of living and doing a Fulbright and how that is an expense that you have to really invest in. And so I really love for there to be like an organization that like deals with that and advocates on behalf of that. I would really love for there to for people to push for more money invested in Fulbright grants amount, just because it is really hard to be a working class Fulbrighter, like incredibly difficult actually.
I think that's really important to kind of, I just want to piggyback on what Dan is saying. I was renting an apartment when I got my Fulbright. I had to break a lease. There are all these components of preparation that are really difficult and challenging for certain income groups. So navigating all of that is really important too. There's just so much, really.
Yeah, like one thing that that group could do is like, make a compiled list of recommendation how to do your taxes on your Fulbright grant. How do you file that? I remember being on my grant and asking so many people, and everyone was like, "I'm just not gonna file taxes." And I was like, "That's not the solution. I need like real world solutions. How do you file a Fulbright grant as like a taxable income? Because obviously you're teaching, but then you can't. It's a really hard filing because you don't have like a because your Fulbright commission is technically not your employer. So it's like it's very complicated. So if someone just had like a guy out there, I would love to see that. I don't need any more, but I'm pretty sure someone will need it in the future. So just putting it out there into the universe.
You just have to put the disclaimer, like, this is everything that we know, but this isn't financial advice.
Get a tax accountant or something. Yeah, I don't think Prism's ever gotten that question that I can think of, but I know me personally, like if I'm talking to like future like grantees that like went through my university or like or from my hometown or something, they all ask, like, how do you file your taxes? It's so true. I'm not sure if anyone else wanted to have ideas to share before I ask the next question. Okay. I think maybe we've already touched on this one, but I'm just going to ask it again so that we're thorough and make sure everyone's questions are answered. Somebody asked, what is the biggest challenge your individual group has faced so far, and what is the biggest challenge you faced together? So I think it's both your individual groups and then us as a collective, kind of what are our challenges. I know maybe we've already touched on kind of like the money and time challenges, but if anyone else wants to add something to that and then maybe talk about some of the FDC challenges that we've encountered.
So one of the challenges that I readily, like immediately encountered was finding Fulbright families, like families that took dependents with them abroad. And so I quickly kind of just pivoted my networking to include families that have had travel experiences and how that impacted their lives. Networking and interviewing public office holders like senators and representatives, things like that. Like we got Senator Paul Strauss on Fulbright families. And so just widening, I realized that I had to widen the people that I was trying to interact with so that I could reach more potential applicants. Because that's really the goal. Like take your dependents with you. You can do anything. You can go abroad still. You can, you know. Sorry, my kids were screaming in the background. They started getting loud. I think that was another challenging aspect as well. I feel like the dependence experience is widely overlooked and not highlighted. So I have the goal of communicating more with dependents and talking about their experiences too.
I think for me, I can't entirely speak a lot on like the Fulbright Diversity Collective challenges because that's been mainly ISRA working on that for Fulbright Cinema. But as an organization of 3 people, finding scheduling has been kind of hard. It's been kind of hard to schedule, even to plan for events sometimes because everyone has so many things going on within their own lives. But also we have such different time zones. And finding really creative and fun ways to kind of overcome this challenge has been exciting because it really kind of like I don't even know the right word, but it strikes a balance in you that like to get to be as efficient as possible. So it's been challenging, but it's also been a really growing experience for us. And I wish I could speak on FGC a little bit more, because it's such an important part of Fulbright Cinema, and it's such an important part of this conversation.
Great. Okay. I thought I was muted, but we do have a couple more questions. This is great. Again, audience members, just send them in. I'll read them off as they come. Somebody asked, I think this is a really cool question. Have you found that Fulbright, and I assume that this person means like the Fulbright program, you know, the institution Fulbright. Have you found that Fulbright has changed with your pressure and influence? Tom, do you want to take this one or take the lead?
Yeah, I think it has, because I think what our influence, first of all, I think when we first started Lotus, we were not taken very seriously as an organization. They're like, I remember people being like, can you explain to me what your organization does? And these are like official meetings that people set out with us, right, to talk to us. So I was like, you didn't Google us like for like 2 seconds to figure out what we do. And once we explain what we do, people always are like, oh, that's amazing work. I'm like, yes, thank you. But mostly I think it's changed. Now we don't have to do that. Now people recognize our organization. They recognize the work that we do, and they've been very conscious about making changes within Fulbright and letting us take the lead when it comes to partnership and collaboration. And I think that is a significant change from when we first started. And I think there's a conscious effort to really push for more applicants from different types of parts of society, which I think the Fulbright was not doing before we came along. And so I do have a lot of hope that things are changing and that they will continue to change for the better.
So I think that there's a new level of accountability expected from the Fulbright program that they didn't have so widely observable before FGC popped up and all the affinity groups were initiated. However, you know, it's a government program and it has multiple legs. So there are multiple parts of it, and there's such a variety of different people engaged in the different legs of that program. So I am optimistic that our groups will bring about more and more change and more light, bringing more light to how actual Fulbrighters feel about the way that communication is carried out, about the way that advertising the program and advocating for the program is focused. So I'm hopeful.
I also think that I'm very hopeful as well, because the people that are working on the FDC are coming from many different backgrounds, and it's such such a diverse group of people, and that to me is already expanding what Fulbright's mission initially was, because our own little networks exists, and then you get together with like the affinity group, and that exists, and then with the Fulbright diversity group that exists as well. And whether it's working with commissions at local universities or other connections that we have, it's bound to go beyond whatever the program was. So hopeful, and I think it's happening now with this little conversation too.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I also think that Fulbright has been a lot more receptive from when I first did my grant till now, and they seem a lot more willing and open to working with the Fulbright Diversity Collective. And yeah, that brings me hope, and it makes me feel so just good. Yeah, especially because it just proves that what we're doing it's working, right? It's having an impact, and yeah, I hope that it continues to move in that same direction.
Yeah, I think Prism too has been really encouraged by the partnership that's developing between us and obviously the FDC organizations, but the Fulbright program proper too. I remember when my co-founders and I, Michaela Gill, Laura Steinecke, and I went to Berlin for a diversity conference in 2018, and this was kind of like, I think Noir was there too. There were Noir representatives, the original founders of Noir were there. So it was our two groups that were kind of invited to this diversity conference to talk just generally about diversity in the Fulbright program, which I believe was also maybe a grantee-led idea, now that I'm thinking about it, just to have a conference in general and like talk about issues of diversity in the program. But that had kind of developed the same year that Fulbright Prism was founded, and we were happy to be included, but we found that, yeah, a lot of the Fulbright, I think, administrators and staff didn't really quite know what to do with us and really didn't know, like, oh, like, can we be trusted? Oh, are they gonna like try to like burn us down from the inside? Or like, is this like a really like fiery activist group? Like, or like, I don't know. I'm not sure what went through their minds, so I don't want to project, but I think they were a little, yeah, they were a little cautious. And I remember like we were trying to get our profile boosted, and people were very hesitant to like reshare our posts or, you know, post about us at varying levels throughout the Fulbright program. Like Val said, like it does have many legs, and some people were more ready than others. But over the last several years, yeah, they've just become increasingly more welcoming, a lot more open to collaboration, a lot more open to helping us market. I'm not saying we live in a perfect world. I'm sure my colleagues on the call understand as well, but it's definitely become a much better partnership. And I think too, maybe just like on the same topic, advice for people who want to start their own affinity group and kind of hope to work with the Fulbright program. I think it's important to remember to be patient. We were, I think, pretty disheartened at the beginning because we were very excited about our mission and what we were doing, and you know, it took a while to kind of win people over. So I think it's important to be patient. The Fulbright program is a huge organization and made up of individuals who you can contact and work with, but it does take a lot of time for institutional change to happen. So I think it's important to keep trying, but don't get disheartened right away. And I think it's important to make sure that you do what you do with excellence. I think everyone on this call takes a lot of pride in doing what they do. We wouldn't spend our volunteer hours, our free time doing it if we didn't. And so I think it's important to do your organization with excellence and professionalism. And I think the Fulbright program responds to that as well. They want to know that like, I know you're legit, like you're taking your own mission seriously. There's somebody, like you're a group that they can invest their time and resources into as well. So I guess I just mean like if you're like taking your mission seriously is a good place to start as well. But those are great questions. I don't know if anyone else has anything else to add before I move on to the next questions, because I think that's a really good one. Okay. Somebody asked, what gives you strength in your activism? Or I guess maybe we could even frame it more generally. What gives you strength in, you know, just pursuing your mission and what you do?
So I was recently talking about Lotus to like a stranger, and I realized that without knowing it, I was talking about our mentorship program and how I got started and what we're doing with it. And Amika's really running it, our co-founder. And the person on the other end was like, "You're really excited when you're talking about this. Like you're filled with so much joy." And I realized that when it's really difficult, I keep going. At least for me, my team, we keep going because this is a passion project of ours that we care a lot about, and it does at the end of the day bring us a lot of joy knowing that like things are going well and that we're really helping a bunch of people. And you really have to remember those moments when you're going through some more rough patches, because there will be rough patches, I will admit to that, but knowing that the end product is going to like help a good number of people, you know, go in a really amazing Fulbright program potentially, is really what keeps me going.
Anyone else want to talk about what keeps them going in their advocacy?
Yeah, I would say it's our people that we're interacting with, like the people that are reaching out with questions. It's the people that we're able to directly work with, that even like that little bit of help that we can give as an organization, whether it's support or just advertising something that they did or highlighting their story. And it one way encourages them to keep going, and whatever they do is just going to be another growth. And also on our end, it motivates us to keep going because we see that our work is actually being touched by people. And so the people, whether they're alumni or current Fulbrighters, whether they're like us on this call, they keep us going. They keep giving us the hope and like the strength that we need to keep pushing whatever we're going through, because it isn't easy and it's not being done, but we're getting it done. So it's good to know that.
I would say the FDC keeps me going. Seeing all of you grow and be consistent, and I love sharing your content. It's just inspirational for me. I'm like, okay, I can do this.
I think what keeps me going is when Fulbright Nor has an event and there's someone in the audience who says, wow, I really needed this. Thank you. And because it's just, yeah, I mean, I'm not expecting like the thank you. I'm not expecting to bring so much, I guess, like happiness to someone else's like life or day for that moment. And seeing them know that they're not alone, and them feeling like, yes, there's a space for me. Yeah, that makes me so excited.
Yeah, it sounds like you've all touched on this theme of like just helping other people and passing it on to the next generation. I know that brings me energy, and it brings a lot of people on at Fulbright Prism energy when we're maybe struggling to get through an event or planning something or just just pursuing our mission. But then we'll always get like these random emails like, I just found your organization, this is so great, like I found your resources helpful, or like that event that week was really cool, like so glad to have found this network. And yeah, it makes it really worth it to just know that like somebody out there in this big like widespread Fulbright community like needed kind of the resources or whatever it is that you're providing. It's really fulfilling, just knowing that you helped like one or two other people. Okay, we have one more question from the audience. Somebody asked, do you think that the FDC should fight for a place or recognition within the administrative side of Fulbright? So I think they mean like, within Fulbright proper, the Fulbright program kind of structure, institution, or remain more grassroots? Is there a way to stay grounded in our groups while still getting support from higher ups without the cost of, censorship, and that sort of thing, or while recognizing that we do work for free? And I feel like we've talked
I
about
was,
this on FDCs. No, I'm sorry. I was just trying to prompt people to think more. I know we've talked about this on FDC, I think, like a lot of times, like how do we kind of leverage our group dynamic? So this is a good question.
I was just going to say that I would absolutely love for all of us to be paid for what we do, right? Because like we all said, we all have jobs outside of this and we all have our own lives. And I think that can also, going back to the challenges question, that can also be the challenge, right? Knowing that I'm doing all this wonderful work and I'm happy to do this work, but then still not, fully being appreciated or valued. And I think having, like a position within like the Fulbright program for this work would be essential. And if I'm being honest too, it's something that I think about in the future, like, I wonder if I could do this, like within Fulbright, like, like 15 years from now, because you see, the executive directors, or you see, this person in this position, and they've also had Fulbrights. So I say, why not? Yeah, why not have like a proper position within the Fulbright program for the FDC?
That's a really interesting point, Tyler, about like maybe not even like I had read the question as like, oh, should the Fulbright program like merge with Fulbright Prism, you know, like acquire us almost like a business transaction. But just the fact of like, you know, us taking, you know, our experiences, both as diverse grantees, but also as like, you know, affinity group leaders, and then joining the like the Fulbright program in whatever capacity, is also another really powerful way, you know, to bring in kind of our ideas to the program. Thanks for sharing that.
I think there's definitely differing opinions on this, but I think from Lotus standpoint, we really want to be more like an advisor to the Fulbright program rather than be incorporated within the program, mostly because there's just certain things that we want to be able to advocate on behalf. And since the Fulbright program has their own political mission and political agenda, it doesn't always align with what we want to do. And so while we would love to continue to advise them on what they should do, we really want to have the ability to, like, if we want to put out a statement against violence against AAPI members, we want to be able to do that. We don't want to have to consult the Fulbright program to do that. We want to just be able to be doing that because the people that we ideally are working for is other Fulbright alums out there and not just the Fulbright program itself, even though we are Fulbrighters. And so I think in the future we would love to continue to collaborate with the Fulbright program, but for now we're gonna just be separate because I think it just really works better with our mission overall.
Yeah, I also think it's like a really interesting question that has many different answers. And I think the way that it will develop and evolve, it depends on, I guess, like the direction that we're trying to take it. But there's so many different ways to continue to work with like the Fulbright Commission without having to be part of the program and being able to do everything that we're wanting to do without having to consult anybody beforehand. And I don't know if that would be like a middleman, where it's like we used to have like the European Fulbright Diversity Collective like chair, where it's like someone would be able to facilitate these interactions and it wouldn't be so much on us. But I think compensation or at least recognition is very, very important moving forward, regardless of whether we're grassroots or part of it, because a lot of work that we're doing is impacting a lot of people who are doing Fulbrights, who are part of the Fulbright community, including ourselves. And Fulbright benefits from it, regardless if they want it or not. They're benefiting, and it's like positive. So starting from like recognition and hopefully compensation in the future is something that I think Fulbright SNAP pushes for.
I don't know if anyone else wanted to talk or have thoughts on this topic. I know for Fulbright Prism, we were pretty adamant, our board, about remaining separate, I think, especially at the beginning, because like what all of you are saying, like it's really great to have, freedom of speech to say what we want to say without having to get approval from anyone else or, run up the flagpole. I remember, and this is not necessarily a slight, but this is just kind of like emblematic of the issue. Like last summer, I think we had all posted things about George Floyd's murder, and like the Fulbright program was like scrambling. And I don't know their internal processes. Like maybe they had to draft something and then get it approved at like all sorts of levels. But it was much after ours when it came out. And it was just like, it's really nice to just be able to post things and like advocate for things that we believe in without having to go through bureaucratic loops, which I'm sure have their purpose and have their place. But it is really advantageous, I think, to be very small and close knit as an organization. Cool. Well, I don't know if anybody else has any questions. I think we still have some time, but if there are no other questions, we can go ahead and close it out for today. I just wanted to thank our panelists one more time, Tan, Zuka, Tyler, and Valerie. Thank you so much for sharing about your organizations and your missions. You're all doing such amazing, important work. And I know our audience really appreciated hearing from you. I don't know if you guys have any closing remarks that you wanted to share. If not, maybe just, share your email address or your Instagram handles one more time so that people can follow up with you after the panel. But I'll turn it over to you guys for some final words. Tyler, would you like to start? I'll put you on the spot.
Yes, I just want to say thank you so much for putting this together. It's been such a pleasure to participate in this discussion. So thank you, Tim, and thank you, Fulbright Prism. And it's been so great working with the rest of the FDC. Yeah.
And on behalf of Fulbright SNAM, we're very happy to be here and really happy to be part of the Fulbright Diversity Collective and all the great work that we are doing right now. And we look forward to future collaborations and future work that's gonna positively impact people. And yeah, thanks again for organizing this, Fulbright Prism, and Tim for a wonderful panel with like amazing people.
Yeah, kind of want to harp on what everyone has just said. I want to thank Prism for inviting us and Tim for moderating all of this. And for everyone else on this panel as well, because I had a really nice conversation. And it's nice to see all of you. So that's really, that made my weekend. So I'm having a nice Saturday so far. And I also want to thank everyone who came out. I know it takes a lot to sit through a Zoom panel, I'll be honest. And so doing that itself is just like, thank you for doing that. And yeah, I hope everyone has a lovely waking up. Can't talk. I hope everyone have a lovely weekend after this.
Great. Thank you, everyone. Valerie says her children are screaming, which is understandable. So I just wanted to share that you could find Fulbright Families. It's at @Fulbright Families on Instagram and Facebook. The others also share theirs in the chat. I'll put this in the description on YouTube, but it's at Fulbright Noir, at Fulbright Lotus, at Fulbright.Salam. And then we also have other organizations that weren't on the panel today at Fulbright Latinx, at Fulbright Access, at Fulbright HBCU, and at Fulbridge. All really great organizations. And you can find those on Fulbright Prism's website as well. We have descriptions of each of those under our partners page. If you go to a Fulbright Prism homepage and then click on About and then click on our partners, everyone has a little description and links there. But I will put those in the description on YouTube as well, so you can follow up after viewing this panel. So thank you again to our panelists, and I hope you all have a lovely weekend. Take care.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great weekend.